So welcome back to another episode, and yes, the episode is called, Do I Really Need All of This Stuff That's Behind Me and Around My Entire Place? All the video games, all the anime stuff, all of the Dungeons and Dragons stuff of the past, all my anime art books. Do I really need all of this stuff? Like, what is my problem? And we're going to talk about that today. And I'll ask you guys, what do you like collecting? Let me know down below. And is it too much? Have you gone too far with some of your collections? We all want to know, so definitely leave a comment below. So every once in a while, I'll be walking around the games room, or I'll be walking around the rest of my place, and I'm like looking at all this stuff that I've accumulated over the last 40 plus years. And I look at it and I'm like, this is a lot of stuff. This is a lot of stuff. Like, what is my problem? What's my problem? And the funny thing is, I don't have a problem. That's what I'm gonna say. A lot of people will be like, you do have a problem. You're nuts. You gotta stop. And I gotta explain why. And it's not because I'm older now. I just turned 51. It's not because I'm getting older. I'm just nostalgic about the past. It's a little bit deeper than that. And I just want to go back to probably the first time I ever had this feeling. And that is, we have to go back to grade 12. I was graduating high school. I was nearly out. It was almost over finally. And I remember sitting on my bed, contemplating moving on with my life. And no longer was I in elementary school. No longer would I be in high school. I was going out to the real world. And I gotta say, I was very, very scared of that concept. I'm like, no, I'm not quite ready for that yet. And all of a sudden, I believe it's the first time that I became super nostalgic. And it wasn't for that long ago as well. And this is like 1993. And I remember sitting there and I turned on Phantasy Star on my Sega Master System. And I'm in grade 12. I'd first played the game in grade 8, down the road, mentioned it a billion times. And this is the moment I had. I was having a couple of beers, not too many, just a couple, smoking a cigarette, because that's what I did back then. And all of a sudden, I got deeply, I wouldn't even call it upset. I just was like, oh, the longing for the past. And it hadn't even been that long. It'd only been a few years from grade 8. And I'm like, oh, I miss those times, playing Dungeons and Dragons with my friends, and things already at that time were changing. All of our friend groups had broken up, everybody had gone their separate ways, and it was the end of that era. And I even knew that. And I was just like, oh, I really love that basement of my friend's place, and playing Phantasy Star over there, and playing Dungeons and Dragons, and all the RPGs. We played so many over there, tabletop games, like Top Secret, and so many Marvel superheroes. It was great. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Robotech, the role-playing game. We did it all. And those times are changing. And so I left high school and I started off into the world on my own. And it was fascinating because at that time I had no money to collect, or I had no money to buy much of anything. I just had a little bit. And at that time I discovered my local anime store, got really into all that stuff. But here's the point that I wanted to say, was that was the first time I had a bit of nostalgia, and it was when I was younger. It's not just because I got older and had it. I was already having it when I was younger. And during the years, playing all of these games has been such a joy. And I played all of these games the moment that they got released. They're not something that I just bought, I bought a big bulk thing of Super Nintendo games. No, I bought all these games as they came out, or Genesis games as they came out. And I had a great amount of fun with all of them because I was just a video game fan. I didn't have a show. I didn't have anything like that. There was no social media. There was no internet. So all my experiences built into my head and into my memories. And that's where I had to hold on to them because I had nowhere else to put them. You know what I mean? I can go online and say, guys, I want to talk about this new game I'm playing, like Dragon Warrior 1 back in the day. I couldn't do that. And so it all became about memory. And even bumping into my friend Rob back in the day in like 1995 when I first started hanging out with him. The reason why I liked hanging out with Rob is because we'd sit in my basement and he talked to me about his video game memories. And I was like, wow. And we would share this love of the hobby. and we just would so enjoy it together. And I just would sit there and I said, tell me that story again that Christmas when you got your Nintendo, and I was reveling in it. And because that's what we had to do. We couldn't go online and see videos. There was no videos of anybody talking about video games or pop culture then, not at that time. Yes, the Electric Playground would come out later on with my friend Victor Lucas, but that'd still be a few more years.
I imagine you're recognized a little bit in Japan, but how about in America?
日本でもですね、ちょっと有名なんだと思います。アメリカでも。いやいや、そんなことない。
And so there was this great time for me of just taking in all of the material, taking in movies, taking in video games, anime, art books, manga, comic books. I would just eat it all, and it would go into here. It wasn't about showing it. It was about quite literally just absorbing it into my brain and loving it and living there and enjoying it so very, very much. What has ended up happening is, this is a fascinating thing. I started the show, and then I could have a show, and it was unbelievable that I could come in front of a camera and talk about some of the things that I love. All of this stuff behind me, I could talk about video games. It was like, and I wasn't a great host, I'm not saying that to begin with, not at all. But I could do it finally. There was finally an outlet after, at that time, 34 years of no outlet. Just my friends and not that many friends who were into that video games I could talk to. It was like Rob and my friend Satan and a few other people that I could talk to like seriously about video games, and we could really like go off about it. And we did. We sat many nights just talking about video games all night. That's all we would do. And the possibility of the future and what games are going to be like in the future. And so for the first time ever, I could talk in front of a camera about the stuff that I love. And it took me a long time to be able to articulate that love, but we finally got it. I feel like had got there a little bit.
I'm looking at the back right now. One thing that always pisses me off is, and wait, I'm supposed to be the happy console gamer. I'm not supposed to be all pissed off. But maybe it'd be more funny if I was at times.
And over the years, as I've had the show, and as I've been a big video game fan, still buying the latest releases, just because I loved it so much, that I was like, oh, you know what? I'm older now. I can kind of dip back into the past and buy some things that really mean something to me. And it's been fascinating to do that over the years.
Well, this is the game that changed my life.
And why do I do it? Do I do it just because I want to hoard a bunch of video games? No, not at all. For me, this is not a hoarding. This is a memory collection. That's what this all is. So when I buy something like, say, Ys 3 here, The Wanderers from Ys, boxed, still has the shrink wrap on it. Why? This old game, because it takes me back. It takes me back to the early 90s when I got this game and I got rid of the box back then. And now I can have it. And it reminds me of that Christmas when I got it in like 1991. And what a treasured Christmas that was with my parents and the people around me at the time. So I'm not just buying a video game in shrink wrap and it's like, oh, it's cool, it's worth something. Not about money. Not about money. I wish this was worth $5. Then I would have been a little bit nicer to buy. But I'm buying that memory that when I walk past the shelf, I see this and I'm like, oh, that Christmas. In fact, this Christmas, I walked into the games room and I picked this up and I sat there and I looked at the back and it was like it's hard to describe, almost like a teleporter. Through time and space back to this moment, and I could relive this moment again. And it was like intoxicating and it was wonderful, and I really enjoyed it. And I was so happy that I had this in my collection because it takes me back to the past.
You haven't changed a bit.
Basically, I'm trying to buy my past in a lot of ways. To do with a lot of buying, if I buy retro stuff or anything like that, owning things like Magician Lord. Why do I own this? It's a giant cartridge. Because, and I got this for I think it was like $25 when I got it back in the 90s. It was a great deal. Things weren't as expensive as they are now with collecting. And I bought this because it takes me back to the 90s of walking into an arcade and seeing the Neo Geo. And when I get this, I'm not joking, I'm gonna do it. Oh, and all Neo Geo collectors know it. The smell within the clam case is just unbelievable. There's a certain plasticky smell that is the Neo Geo, and it is that time period. And yeah, I go in a race back into the past, and I go and get to revisit some of these memories and some of these things that really matter to me. And I like to buy a lot of anime art books and things still from that time because they remind me of that time. And I think what it is a lot of the time is that I kind of marvel at the John back then because there was nothing around him social media wise. He was just so into anime and video games and movies and comics that it wasn't even funny. It was an obsession, an absolute obsession, as it still is now. And now I can go and get some pieces from the past that kind of, put together the puzzle, and I get to live there for little moments again. And as I'm getting older, it's getting sweeter and sweeter. It was sweet when I was in grade 12, looking back on grade 8 playing Phantasy Star, but being 51, looking back at being 13 playing Phantasy Star is another level. There's also just another thing that I just love, the art. I will buy video games to capture art at the time. Even the art of something like Willow, and capturing a great game, a movie that came out back then, an RPG that we really loved. And me and Rob finished this a few years later. I think it was about 3 years ago, we finished this for the very first time. We just adored it, and it's capturing that time. And I think we all have that. It doesn't matter when you were born, when you grew up, and how old you are. Everybody, I think, has a little bit of love for the past and for those little moments that made us. And they are the moments that made us. And that I'm glad I did that segue, because all of these games are what made me who I am, and who I am is what kind of made these games what they are to me. Kind of a symbiotic relationship, and it's wonderful. And it's not just man goes and buys a bunch of games and stuff. My mother never really understood my collecting because she never collected anything at all. She's just like, oh, John, you got a lot of stuff. And I was just like, yeah, but it's stuff that I love and stuff that is meaningful. It's stuff that's meaningful, and people can collect and do whatever they want their own way. Some people just will walk out and go, I want to buy a Sega Genesis collection complete, and I'll pay the money for that just so I have it because I like the Sega Genesis. That's completely valid. I'm just trying to explain why I have all of this stuff. And as I stated before, it's not about the monetary value of this stuff. Yes, is this stuff going up in value? Oh, absolutely. Do I like that? Sure. Do I want to sell it? No. This stuff means something to me quite a lot. Everything has a memory. And I'm going to pull out Earthbound here just for this is such a great memory. And I can't believe this game's turning like 30 years old this year. It's just insanity to me. When I hold this game in my hands, I'm not holding money. I'm holding my memory of when I was 21, sitting in my parents' basement, having a tall can of beer, having a cigarette, playing this game. It was on the screen, and just being so relaxed and chill. I'll never forget it. I was in this Zen mode, listening to the beautiful ambiance music of Earthbound, which I just adored the soundtrack of. Just sitting there, and I took a moment. This is funny. I took a moment to walk away from the experience, and I lived on the bottom floor. My parents lived on the top floor. I was on the bottom floor, and so I could open my sliding window and be on the back garden right there. And it was a beautiful summer. And I opened up my window, and I was kind of sitting there drinking my beer, having a cigarette, just looking out, kind of enjoying the moonlight, and just kind of walking away from Earthbound and having another chill moment. And then all of a sudden, I heard this screaming and yelling with this mother and son over, across the my grass and the next house over, and they were having an argument, this mom and son, and she's yelling, going, "Take out the garbage!" And he's like, "I don't want to take out the garbage." He said, "Fine," and I think he throws the garbage down and all this. And I remember, this is so weird of me, I remember just going, huh. I almost enjoyed the moment because I was so zen, and this weird moment had happened. I was having this nice relaxation thing. Meanwhile, other realities were going on with his family, with his son who did not want to take out the garbage. And so that is why I love having my copy of Earthbound. That little moment and that little memory of Zen John that night, having his beer and his smoke, enjoying the game, and seeing this absolutely strange thing happen off to the side. And it's moments like that that make me enjoy my collection and enjoy all my games. And here's another thing. I buy a lot of games. I buy a lot of games on Switch. And I'm like, I talk about them in New Game Stuff episodes, and I'm like, yeah, I can't wait to play this game. Do I get to all of these games? Not all of them, no. I know, but I aspire to. And I bought all those games because they mean something. It's like, maybe it's a shooter. I'm like, yeah, I can't wait to play the shooter. And meanwhile, I'm tackling all the big games of the year for the show. But that game is still there in my mind. And when I go through my Switch collection and I look at all my games, there's not one game there that I don't want to own. There's not one game there that doesn't mean something to me for some reason. And that's what I'm trying to explain to my daughter, is that all of this stuff means something. And so when me and her draw together, I talk about the art of things, and I say, oh, look at the art on this box, or look at this. And to show that there's some meaning behind it, not just that Daddy has a lot of video games, you know, like I remember we were in a store a little while ago and I was buying some Neo Geo CD games, and she was taking them up to the counter for me as I was picking out a few of them. And she's like, Daddy, you really love video games. And I said, yes, I do. And I was like laughing in the store with the owners, and we thought it was pretty funny. And as I said, this hobby is me. I am the hobby. It's really, really weird. Yes, I'm a human being who's married and has a wife and child who I adore above all of this stuff. But beyond that, below that is all of this other stuff, the love, the caring for this hobby. It means so much to me. And it's not just the video games, it's also the anime, it's the art. It all comes together. It surrounds us. It's the force for me. It quite literally is. And it's been a pleasure. And all of this stuff is a pleasure. And also, if I come back, I've had a hard day or I've had some problems or something like that, my truck is broken down, I can walk in the games room and I get energy. And I get energy of all of this stuff. All of it. Maybe not NHL 94, that's not in the collection. But for some of you out there, it might be giving you some energy. For me, every game, every single piece, every single thing I own has a story. If you came over here today, we could walk around, you could pick out any item, I'd be like, yes, I got this because of this reason. Everything has a reason, and that's why I have all of this stuff, and why I continue to buy a lot of this stuff is because it means something, and it's deeply satisfying to me as a fan, and that's the main thing that I am. I don't really look at myself as a collector. Maybe I'll probably say that once in a while, but below it all is I'm a fan of it all, and it's been a pleasure to do and collect all of this stuff and get to play some of this stuff and watch this stuff. It's been really a lot of fun, and that's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be fun, that is for sure. So guys, let me know, why do you collect? Why do you own a lot of the stuff in your collection? Have you gone too far in a few places? Let me know down below. So anyways, guys, until next time.